Hey guys, my name's Sean Elders and this is Pinnacle Combat Arts. Like, subscribe, comment down below, hit the bell so you can be notified every time we get a new video. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between stick and sword and why that is so important and what differences will be a game changer in your training. Let's get started. Sword and stick, or you don't have to think about it as a stick. It could just be any impact weapon. It could be really super heavy or it could be really light. Sword wise, it could be any length. When we're specifically talking about, it could be double-handed, you know, what they call dos manos, or it could be single-handed. It could be different shaped swords, whatever one you like the most. But what is the difference? Why, when I got started in this, what I noticed once I went out into the Filipino world, I realized that everybody had their own ideas about what the stick was, what the stick represented. And some would work with training swords and some did not. And so I started to, you know, I had seen some really bad machete attacks. And I'm like, man, some of these stick techniques, they don't seem like they would work very good against the machete. And so what I realized after I started training with these different masters is that they started to help me understand what it was all about. And my understanding was that, you know, when the Spaniards took over the Philippines, they were not allowed to have swords anymore. And so they had to take, the rattan grows everywhere throughout the Philippines. And so they replaced the sword with the stick, the vine, the rattan vine. And they started to incorporate and be able to still continue their knowledge and training of the sword work, but through the stick. But over time, through culture and cultural changes and stuff like that, the Spaniard influence and all that stuff like that, there are styles of the Filipino martial arts that only train with the stick. They see everything as stick work. And then you have guys that they will train with the sword and they maintain the traditional way of the Filipino martial arts. So it's important for me, I find it important to always stick to the indigenous ways of doing things. I'm a more indigenous guy. So I am going to always treat, for the most part, I wanted to know the difference between what I would do with an impact weapon and what I would do with an edge weapon. And so that's what brought me down the path of seeking out the right kind of masters to teach me those ways and to understand what I can and can't do. And then also through my own experimenting. I don't give all my power away. I have my own personal power, which means that I get taught certain material and then I test that material out to see what works best for me. And that's an important part of this whole thing. Do not give all your power away. It's important for you to develop your own style of fighting and have your own understanding of combat based on today's world, not hundreds of years ago. That's an important part of this whole thing. So with the edge weapon and the impact weapon, we have to treat these weapons differently, in my opinion, in today's world. Why? Because you may pick up an impact weapon. Your ability to pick up an impact weapon is a lot quicker and easier because they're more accessible unless you're in a place where machetes are laying around all over the place. Impact weapons usually the case, but not always. So it's important for you to understand that. So when we will the weapon, this is the important part, is that if I will the impact weapon, it's important what weight it is. Based on what weight it is, how am I going to will the weapon? And where am I going to hold it? And every single weapon that you pick up will tell you if it needs to be here or here, okay? It may be even up higher like this, based on the weight distribution and what you're trying to do with it. And it will show you, if you pay attention to the way when you swing it, it will show you what its strengths are and what you should avoid, the weaknesses of it are. And that is very important when it comes to it. The same thing with the sword. The sword, machete, whatever you want to call it, okay, there's many different names, many different shapes. an edged weapon has different weights. For instance, the one I'm holding right now, it has I call this the belly of the blade. Okay, this is the belly of the blade. This is the meat of the blade. So where my strength of cutting it would be is right in this area where it starts to taper down. The weight of the weapon is right here. Also, the handle and the weight of the bottom all dictate and tell me where I should hold this weapon. And I think that's very important when we look at this because, you know, every single one of them is different. And obviously this is a trainer too, okay? And trainers are going to be different. They're going to have a different weight. And that's why it's important for, if you have a sword that you like, an edged weapon that you like, that you get it made and shaped the same, exact same, and then try to add some weight to it to give it the same amount of weight. And you can drill holes in it and put weight in it to get it closer to the weight distribution that it is, because you want to be used to picking up one with the other. And so they're made up out of all kinds of things. When I was coming up, they made trainers out of steel, which was really insane because when you clink them together, they put nicks in them. Okay, so you'd have to always be filing them down and stuff. They did aircraft aluminum. Those were hard too because they would get nicks in them because it was a softer metal. But eventually we got into the plastics and the polymers, and that's where I think it holds these hold up a lot better when it comes to impact. So that's an important part of this thing. When we will the weapon, if I will the impact weapon, it can be willed however way. All that's important is that when it makes impact, that it doesn't come out of your hand. Okay, that's an important part. So if it's a little bit off, your fist is turned a little bit, a lot of times that's not going to make a difference. But when you have an edged weapon, you have to have that thing tilted the right way. And so when I have my students, I always tell them, use the stick just like the edged weapon, because when it comes to willing and swinging the weapon, because you want to make sure that when I have this, your knuckles are facing the correct direction along where the blade would. So if you look at the stick, notice my knuckles, where my knuckles are. It's round, it has no bearing on what it's going to be. But if I pull out the edged weapon and I look at it, notice where my knuckles are. They line up with the blade. So when you swing the weapon, you want to try to swing the weapon always where when you are doing it, that in the line of sight, we need to make sure that blade stays where I'm heading the target, it stays on the same path. It's not turned off a little bit. It's not turned off this way. It is lined up perfectly so that it can cut appropriately and it can deal with and engage another weapon appropriately, okay? And that's an important part of this whole thing as well. The other thing that comes to mind when I think about an edged weapon is, what kind of sword is it? Some swords can take on another edge straight on, but there are other swords that are a certain type of sword that you can't. If you went straight on, it would just put a big old, could deform it or whatever, or the structure of the blade would put a big old tooth mark in it, okay? That is not always going to be the way that you're going to will it. Some weapons are like that. Some weapons are strong going straight forward, but weak to the side, from the side. And then there are other weapons that are stronger on the side and less weak on the blade. It depends on the type of sword. It depends on what part of the world the sword is developed at, okay? Some of you may go, well, only a good sword is going to be the one that goes straight on. And in many cases, that may be the case, but it depends on the style of fighting, okay? It depends on the style of fighting that person's doing. When I talk about the sword and the stick, we think about, okay, let's talk about Abranico. So with an impact weapon, you could do an Abranico like this. And notice where my knuckles are right now. I'm going like this. But when I use the edge weapon, if I do the same thing, and if that sword is weak on the side, if I hit something, it's going to bend it out of shape. Okay? So I have to turn my blade to make sure that it hits in the right spot of the blade. Okay? Because I don't want to use the side. But there's some swords that are strong to the side and straight on, and I can use that to, for instance, for a parry. But some blades, you have to turn the blade towards the weapon so that it doesn't misshape the blade. It all depends on the sword and how the sword was made. So I want you to keep in mind all these different little variations nobody ever talks about, okay? When we wield the weapon, we want to make sure that we're in the right range and we're in the right position. Wanted to update you guys and let you guys know that we have a Patreon account where you can donate and help our channel stay alive, keep going. We've been going at this for 4 years for free, sharing all kinds of free content with you guys to help keep our passion for this martial arts alive. I also have a little app where you can go on and you can put in, donate some money towards coffee. For me, I drink coffee every morning and I enjoy coffee. But any support you guys can give me, I appreciate that. Obviously, you liking and subscribing the channel is really wonderful. Thank you guys for the wonderful comments down below. They really do motivate me. I really do appreciate when you guys let me know how much you appreciate what I'm doing, because I've been doing this for a long time and I'm finally sharing this knowledge with you of martial arts and all that. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. When I look at this target, I want to make sure that the way that I engage and start my attack is appropriate, okay? So if I'm in the mirror, let me do this real quick. If I'm in the mirror and I start, a lot of times I watch people swinging the weapon and they go like this. They come straight out like this, okay? The problem with this is that they're not getting full range of their number one, for instance. We'll do a number one. But if she comes in and I do the same thing, if I go here, she could get, all she had to do is just take a slight step back and she's out of range, okay? So I need to get more range out of it. So what's happening is that I want to turn my shoulder towards the attack and I want to bring my weapon up higher, okay? In other words, my fist is in front of my shoulder before I swing it all the way through. Now look how deep I am. I'm way farther in. Same thing on this side. I go off that number one and I'm coming in like this, okay? And I have my hand up high. If my hand's down low, she could just take a little slight step back and she's past the target. So it's important that where you start your attack and where you end your attack is important. So for instance, if she steps just out of range and I cut through, okay? If she's in close, I don't want to cut all the way through and keep going like this. I want to cut through and be ready for the next movement. That's important, because if I cut through and she's real close to me, she's going to get me before I can come back with my next attack. So based on our distance, our pressure, all that plays a huge role in how I'm going to wield my weapon, okay? When I wield my weapon, I want to make sure that if it's an edged weapon, I want to make sure that it's in the right way. So when you're in the mirror and you're sitting there and you're like this and you go here, you look in the mirror and you look at your blade as you do it, and you start off going real slow, okay? If I'm in front and I go like this, I want to pay attention. How is my blade tilted right now? When I look in the reflection, is it targeted right at my neck in the reflection in the mirror? Am I doing that correctly? This is important. This is so important, okay? Because we need to make sure that when we're doing it, it's a nice straight line, see? And my shoulder is in play. I don't want to cut like this, because this is what I call a short slice, okay? I want to get my shoulder involved in that cut, okay? And at the last moment, I can turn my body, see that? To get it, if it's at long range, what we call long range. But if they're in closer and I'm cutting, I want to make sure that I don't turn my body too much, over exaggerate, and let my weapon go too far back, because it's more time I gotta get my weapon forward. So that's a timing signature. So we have to pay attention to how our blades are going. Then when it comes to our interaction with our partner and making contact with the blade, go ahead. I have to slice and cut and make sure that my blade is in line with the impact of their blade. And their blade has to be in line, because if it's turned off, guess what? it's not going to be effective, and you're not going to be able to make contact properly, okay? And it's going to knock it off or whatever. It's going to knock it away, and I'm going to be able to overpower whoever has it lined up the best. They can overpower the other person just when it comes to impact, okay? So we got 1 and 2. We need to make sure that those lines are nice and straight, and there is a feeling that you should get. And when you're doing it, you don't chase the blade, you chase the neck. You look at the person's neck when you're doing this exercise right here, because this is what we call mirror training. I am cutting at their neck, and they should be cutting at my neck, okay? And that is very important. And I'm slicing. This is the other part. When I do it, I slice as I make contact. I slice. I'm not witticking. So there's a difference between lop tick and wittick. This is where people really get it wrong, is that if I wittick, I'm going in and out like that. This is a wittick. Yep, get it in there, put it out there. There you go. Getting too close to your hand. Extend it out a little bit. Okay? And then we got the backhand. Okay? And so that reverberation, you should be able to pay attention to the reverberation and get a good feel for what that needs to be. Okay? And make sure the angles are correct on your blade. And so that is wittick. That is hitting, retracting. What I see a lot of times when people do witticks, lop ticks, the slicing, I see a lot of this. You know, like that, and they're witticking and then passing through when they're supposed to be lop ticking. So it's important that we slice with our motion. Okay, we're slicing, and you have to develop that confidence, because when you first do it, you're like, oh man, this could do this and that could. In your mind, you could be worried about all these silly things about, oh no, I don't want to hit my hand. I don't want to hit my partner's hand. I don't want to. But if you're at this right distance, you're not going to make contact with their hand. Okay, and that's an important part of this whole thing, is that you start off slow and you build up slowly, going the right speed. So it should be like this. You at home and you practice it in front of the mirror, and then on a training dummy, training target of some sort. Then in the air, at home, you do what we call carenza or shadow boxing. Then you can come into the classroom with a training partner and you practice that. And that's the basic evolution of it. And you start off going nice and slow and making sure that I am in the right range. I am cutting straight lines. Her and I should be, and this is what we call, I call this a mirror exercise of your partner, okay? Because we're not trying to kill each other. We're not trying to hurt each other right now. What we're trying to do is we're mirroring each other so that we get the right range, distance, where the contact is correct. All that stuff is you're working all that stuff out. It could be coordination exercise. It could be whatever it is. This is how you figure it out. When I do stick work, it's not as important to how, it is a little bit, and that's why I always say, let's work on precision with our stick, even though it doesn't make a difference. When I do abernicos, we make sure you step back a little bit, and then we go here. We'll do this angle, okay? So notice where I'm at. The swing of this blade, when I make contact, and then I go on the other side, and this is what I call diagonal abernico. And so this is how we're doing it, like that. This is in the witticking family, to hit and retract. Okay? And that's what it is. With the stick, you're just going like this, and you can use the side of the blade to do it. You don't have to use the point of the weapon to do it. You see? All right? And so I'm not going to go into the whole, I could go into a whole witticking abernico thing. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What we're trying to get at is when I do the 1 and the 2 of this, it doesn't take you still need to do the same energy, but it's not as important how angulated it is. But with the blade, you got to make sure that it's right. And so we need to do those basic things. when we talk about defending and all that stuff. For instance, when she gives me a 1 and I put that 1 out like this, I want to make sure that this blade is facing the right direction, okay? I don't want it to be like that, because if it's like that, she can come right in, because the strength of my wrist plays a very important role in that contact. That's why we have to do this check too. I'm not blocking, okay, necessarily. You only block when you're late to the game. What do I mean by that? There's three basic timing signatures. One is when they start to do the 1, I'm already there and I intercept the attack. Number 2 is where I am early or slightly earlier, and I can deflect the attack and move in. And then number 3 is where I block, actually I have to meet force with force and then try to come back with a thing. You really want to try to not just block the attack. You want to be a little bit more earlier so that your counter blocks something. You have to take on all that force. Boom. Okay, you take on all that force. That takes time away from your counterattack. Okay. Also, when we go a little earlier, if she's back here when I make contact, I can make contact to her hand. Okay, and pass through. That's another reason why. We can deflect or we can slice the hand as well to go to the next attack, okay? And so we could even turn it into 4 categories. We have early, which is the intercept. She puts I'm already there. Number 2 is to cut the hand and come in when she's about right here, and I make contact. Number 3 is where I can deflect the attack and come in. And number 4 would be I take on all this power. I have to take on all this power shot that came at me. It could have been a redondo, or it could have been just they're real strong and they just boom, and you're having to take that. And sometimes you have to even put your hand back here just to prevent it from coming down on you. That is late. That's what we call late. And of course, death is the even later one. Which we don't want to do, okay, obviously. So you need to understand that. You need to have an understanding of those different time signatures. How do I make that contact? Boom, that's ideally where you want to go. Or cut the hand and go in, okay? Not always going to happen, but that's how you're going to do it. So say every single one of these. So she does a 1 like this, and I do the roof, number 1 again. This is the inside deflection version. I want to be out there and I want to make sure that I'm making contact right here. I don't want my blade to be turned weird, because that's just going to crash right in me. Why? Because if your wrist is slightly turned over, or if I'm holding the blade and the knife is turned wrong in my hand like that and I make contact, I can't control that. But if I have it here and I have proper structure on my wrist, then I'm able to engage that appropriately, and then I can, do what I need to do, okay? Number 2, outside deflection. I need to make sure I'm lined up, so you just come here and line it up. If it's a shield, same thing. When they come in at that number 2, I want to make sure that this is lined up appropriately, okay? That means that you have to get some good flexibility in that wrist. Number 3 comes in, inside low wing, okay? I want to make sure that the angle of my blade is appropriate, okay? If I do the inside and my weapon is low, I do that one. Or if it's on this side of my body. But if my weapon is on this side of the body or this side of the body and my weapon is pointed up, I do an inside drop blade and then I check. But I want to make sure that this is lined up directly with the blade. If they're at this angle and I'm at that angle, I've got the advantage, because look. If their blade is flat to my blade here, I have more strength, okay, because I'm lined up appropriately. Now we go to the 4, same thing. Now we're going to go to the outside low wing, okay? Outside low wing, my blade is faced directly in, okay, or I have the drop blade, okay, or drop stick if you're doing drop stick. And that's the same thing. I'm able to manipulate her easier than she is to me, because I'm lined up and I have the advantage in this circumstance for this micro movement. Okay? If she does a thrust, I'm going to use the blade and go in. Like I told you before, there's some blades that you can parry it like this, and it's fine because it's designed that way. But I'm going to specifically focus on the alignment of this blade like this. I come in and I'm going to angle the blade just like that, where it's angulated right at the blade, and that's going to move that blade off. And the same thing on the outside. Here, boom, I'm going to angulate the blade and I'm going to cut it right at that angle to move that blade off to the side. So this is what we call inside low wing. This is called an outside low wing for off the number 7, or if it's in Asano numbering system, number 5, okay? These numbering systems are based on my numbering systems too, okay? So here or here. And then we have low or drop blade. You can drop blade off the 7 and you come in crashing this way, or if I move off here, I can come here and I come in and do all these other movements. So it's important that you guys understand this, okay? So our alignment on attacks and our alignment of deflections, okay, or blocks or any of the other things that you do based on your time signature plays a huge role in how effective you're going to be. I hope this helps. I'll see you guys next time. Go to our website, pinnaclecombatarts.com. There you will find more information about our online courses and how to get started today.